My daughter-in-law whispered to my son, "She's too confused to notice the missing money." But I heard everything. For months, I quietly documented every withdrawal, every forged signature. Then one morning, they found 2 police officers at their door. When the detective showed them my evidence folder, my son went pale, and my daughter-in-law started crying. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The sun was warm on my legs, a solid block of late afternoon light across the patterned rug. I had let my eyes close, my knitting resting in my lap, the rhythmic click of needles paused. To anyone glancing in from the kitchen archway, I was Eleanor Prescott napping in her favorite chair, a harmless old woman, a piece of the furniture. The murmur of voices had been a background hum, Marcus and Chloe discussing their day. Then the tone changed. The volume dropped, but the sharpness of it cut through the quiet room. "She's too confused to notice the missing money." The words were clear. They were Chloe's. They were not a question. They were a statement of fact, delivered with a casual, venomous certainty. My breath did not hitch. My hands did not twitch. I maintained the slow, even rhythm of sleep. Inside, a door slammed shut. "Chloe, keep your voice down," Marcus muttered. My son's voice. It lacked conviction. It was the sound of a man who had already agreed, but wanted the record to show a feeble protest. "Why? She's asleep. Look at her. She drifts off all the time. Her mind isn't what it was. It's practically a kindness, Marcus. We're managing it for her. The bank statements just confuse her." I know. It's just... The last transfer, it was larger. And we needed it. The car payment was overdue. It's not like she's using it. It just sits there. We're here, taking care of everything, aren't we? This is our compensation. A practical arrangement. I heard the clink of a glass being set on the granite countertop. I could picture her leaning against it, perfectly manicured fingers tracing the rim. I could see Marcus, shoulders slumped, staring into the sink. "It's just temporary," he said, but the words were hollow, air escaping from a punctured tire. "Of course it is," Chloe soothed, her voice slick. "Once the investment pays out, we'll square it all up. She'll never know a thing was gone. Honestly, we're saving her the stress." They moved away then, their footsteps retreating down the hall toward the bedroom they had insisted I take on the main floor, for my convenience. The house fell silent again, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I opened my eyes. The sun was lower now. The block of light on the rug had narrowed and intensified to a brilliant, accusing stripe. I looked at my hands, resting on the dark wool of my skirt. They were steady. I noted the time. 4:17 p.m. I noted the date, mentally filing it. I noted the exact phrasing. Too confused to notice. For months, I had attributed the small lapses to my own aging. A forgotten grocery item I was sure I'd requested. A bill I thought I'd paid online that Marcus said he'd taken care of. The subtle shift in their demeanor, from solicitous to patronizing. The way conversations halted when I entered a room. I had told myself I was being sensitive. Lonely, perhaps, since George passed. I had given them the benefit of the doubt because he was my son, and she was his wife. That benefit was now revoked. The word confused echoed. I was a bookkeeper for 37 years. I managed the accounts for a small manufacturing firm with precision. I could spot a transposed digit from across the room. My mind built ledgers in my sleep. Confused was not a state I tolerated. I stood up. My joints protested, a familiar ache. I walked to the small, neat desk in the corner of my bedroom. My laptop was there, a modern concession. I opened it. My fingers knew the password. I navigated to the banking website. My movements were methodical, unhurried. The login screen appeared. I input my credentials. The homepage loaded, showing my primary checking and savings accounts. I clicked on checking. I selected the last statement period. My eyes scanned the listed transactions, the direct deposit of my pension, the automatic payment for my insurance, my own small, careful debits for groceries and prescriptions, and then 2/3 of the way down, a line item that did not belong. Online transfer to M. Prescott. The amount was $1,500. The date was 11 days ago. I had not authorized any transfer. I had not been asked. I clicked back to the previous month. There it was again. Online transfer to M. Prescott. $800. The month before that, a $500 transfer. I felt no heat of anger. I felt a cold, spreading clarity. This was not a mistake. This was a pattern. They had linked their account to mine for emergency purposes last year when I had a bad flu. They had never removed the access. They had, instead, weaponized it. I took a screenshot of the current statement. I saved it to a folder I named Tax Documents 2022. I logged out of the bank's website. I closed the laptop lid. I sat in the desk chair, my back straight, looking out the window at the tidy backyard. The cherry tree George planted was in bloom, a riot of pink against the blue sky. The contrast between that beauty and the ugliness just uncovered in my own home was absolute. The hurt was a solid, heavy stone in my chest. The betrayal by Chloe I could absorb. She was an outsider, a acquisitive woman who saw the world as a ledger of gains and losses. But Marcus, my boy, his complicity was the real theft. He had stolen my trust. He had allowed her to steal my dignity, to reduce me to a confused burden, a resource to be quietly drained. The stone of hurt began to transform. Under pressure, it became something else, something harder and more determined. This was not a matter of hurt feelings. This was a matter of numbers, of evidence, of law. They thought I was confused. They thought I was asleep. They thought the woman in the armchair was no longer a person who noticed, who calculated, who acted. They were wrong. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk. Beneath a stack of stationery, I found it. A simple green ledger book, its pages faintly lined. It was old from my working days. I had kept a few as mementos. I opened it to the first blank page. The familiar grid welcomed me. At the top of the page, I wrote the date. I wrote the time, 4:17 p.m. In clear, precise handwriting, I began my first entry. Overheard conversation in kitchen. C stated, she's too confused to notice the missing money. M present, compliant. No substantive objection raised. On the next line, I wrote, bank statement review. I listed the dates and amounts of the unauthorized transfers I had just confirmed. I noted the transaction descriptions. I noted the remaining balance. This was no longer just my savings account. This was Exhibit A. This green ledger was now the record of their crime. And I, Eleanor Prescott, former bookkeeper, was now the accountant of their downfall. The sun had dipped below the fence. The room was growing dim. I did not turn on the lamp. I sat in the gathering dark, the ledger open before me, and I planned. The performance would begin tomorrow. The vague smiles, the misplaced glasses, the repeated questions. I would give them the confused old woman they believed me to be. And all the while, I would be watching. I would be recording. Every dollar, every condescending word, every stolen piece of my piece. The game was not of their choosing. They just didn't know it had started. The green ledger remained on the desk, a silent sentinel in the dark. I did not sleep that night. I planned. Confusion, they believed, was my state. I would make it my weapon. It required a new routine, a performance to replace the quiet, observant woman they thought they knew. My first act began at breakfast. I entered the kitchen as Marcus was gulping down coffee. Chloe was scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed. "Good morning, dear," I said, my voice softer, slightly unfocused. I moved to the cabinet and opened it. I stood there, looking at the boxes of tea. "What do you need, Mom?" Marcus asked, a hint of the old patience in his tone. The oats, the oatmeal." I thought it was here. I let my hand hover, unsure. "Second cabinet to the right, Nora," Chloe said without looking up. "Where it always is." I turned slowly. "Oh, yes, of course." I fetched the oatmeal with deliberate clumsiness, nearly fumbling the box. I caught Marcus's glance toward Chloe, a look that held a shared, weary understanding. The first brick in my facade was laid. That afternoon, I initiated Phase 2, visible forgetfulness. I asked Chloe, who was sketching redecorating ideas for my sitting room, if she had seen my reading glasses. "They're on your head, Nora," she said, a tight smile on her lips. I reached up, feigning surprise. Goodness. So they are. My mind is like a sieve lately. I took them off, peered through them, and put them back on. These don't seem right either. "Maybe you need a new prescription," she offered, already turning back to her fabric swatches. "We can take you sometime." The "we" and "take" were pointed, establishing control. "Perhaps," I murmured, and shuffled back to my room, the picture of benign frailty. Behind my closed door, the performance ended. I took out my phone, a modern smartphone Marcus had insisted I have for safety. I opened the camera app. I had already downloaded a document scanning application years prior for my own records. It was time to repurpose it. I needed physical evidence. The online transfers were one thing. I suspected there were more traditional methods. I waited until they both left the house. Chloe for a lunch, Marcus for a hardware store run. I moved to Marcus's small home office, a converted den. I did not rifle. I looked. On the desk, in a tray marked "To File," I found it. A returned check, one of my checks. It was made out to Green Lawn Landscaping for $300. The signature was mine, or rather, a passable imitation of mine. The slant was slightly off, the tail of the N in Nora too forceful. I had not hired any landscapers. The backyard was maintained by a boy from down the street. I held the check under the desk lamp. I took out my phone. I photographed it front and back, ensuring the endorsement stamp from their bank was clear. The check had been deposited into an account ending in 4418. I knew that was not my account number. I photographed it from several angles. I returned the check to the exact position and angle I had found it. Back in my room, I uploaded the images to a private cloud storage account I had used for years. I then entered the details into the green ledger. Date: May 12th. Item: forged check number 2107. Payee: Green Lawn Landscaping. Amount: $300. Deposited to account number 4418. Photo evidence secured. The act of writing in the ledger, the scratch of pen on paper, was grounding. It was the opposite of confusion. It was order imposed on chaos. A few days later, Chloe tested the waters. She brought me a stack of mail. Just the usual, Nora. Junk mostly. I've taken out the bills. We'll handle them. I smiled vaguely. Thank you, dear. It's so much nonsense, isn't it? It is. Better not to trouble you with it. She paused, watching me flip through catalogs with a detached air. You know, your bank probably sends paper statements too. We should switch those to digital. Less clutter. Marcus can set it up. My heart beat a steady, cold rhythm. They wanted to cut off my paper trail. Oh, whatever you think is best, I said, waving a hand. All those numbers. They give me a headache. Her smile was triumphant. Exactly. We'll take care of it. And so they did. The next month, my paper statement did not arrive. It did not matter. My digital access remained. My secret nightly reviews continued. The ledger grew. A $200 grocery withdrawal from an ATM I never used. Another online transfer for $1,000 labeled medical expense. The boldness was increasing. My performance was convincing them they were safe. I leaned into it. I began telling long, rambling stories about my childhood, stories I would forget midway through. I asked the same question about television schedules 3 times in an hour. I saw the glaze in their eyes, the silent communication of their shared burden. They stopped being careful around me. One evening, as I was dozing in the living room, Chloe spoke plainly to Marcus. The quarterly property tax is coming up on the house. It's quite a sum. Marcus grunted. I know, we're tight until the bonus comes in. The money market account, Chloe said, her voice low but clear. the one from her old job. It just sits. We could cover it from there and replace it later. She hasn't mentioned it in years. She probably doesn't even remember it exists." I felt a jolt. The money market account. A smaller, older account from my retirement rollover. I had not checked it in over a year. They must have found the statements. That's a separate login," Marcus said, hesitance in his voice. "You're an authorized user. You set it up for her, remember? For emergencies." "This is an emergency, Marcus. The tax is an emergency." He was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, just the tax amount. We'll pay it back." I listened to the lie hang in the air. There would be no repayment. This was a new vein to mine. That night, after the house was still, I logged into the forgotten account. The balance was $18,750. I took a screenshot. I would check it again in a week. The next morning, I enacted a new piece of theater. I brought my checkbook to the breakfast table. I set it down with a confused sigh. "Everything all right, Mom?" Marcus asked, looking at the checkbook like it was a live insect. "I can't find my register," I said, frowning. "The little book that goes with this. I wanted to note something down, but I've lost it." This was true. I had hidden it. Chloe took the checkbook from my hands. "Nora, you shouldn't worry about this. We manage all that now, remember?" She placed it in a drawer by the fridge. "We'll find the register. Don't trouble yourself." I allowed my shoulders to sag with apparent relief. "You're so good to me. I don't know what I'd do." Later, I retrieved the checkbook. One check was missing from the middle of the book, torn out. I photographed the stub, which was blank. I noted the missing check number in the ledger. Check number 2115 missing. Stub blank. Likely forged. Awaiting bank record. My world had shrunk to the dimensions of my bedroom and the glowing screen of my laptop. My outings were limited to trips with them to the store, where I played my part, marveling at new products, asking simple-minded questions. In those moments, chained in the passenger seat of Chloe's car, the anger threatened to surface. I would look at my hands clasped in my lap and mentally recite the latest entries in the ledger. Numbers, dates, facts. That was my anchor. The ledger was my truth. Their condescension was their fiction. Every patronizing pat on my shoulder, every simplified explanation, every exchanged glance of pity was a piece of data. It all went into the ledger, not as emotion, but as observation. C spoke to me in exaggerated tones, as to a child. M avoided eye contact after discussion of phone bill. I was building a case, not just of theft, but of a systematic campaign to undermine my competence to facilitate that theft. The bookkeeper in me knew the importance of documentation. The woman, the mother, felt a sorrow so deep it had frozen into a permanent, cold resolve. One night, as I updated the ledger with a new, small transfer I'd discovered, I realized the performance was no longer entirely an act. The person they saw, the vague, fading woman, was a creature of my own creation, but she lived alongside me. I spoke less because I had nothing to say to them. I moved slowly because haste served no purpose. My real energy was spent in the silent, precise work of accounting for my own betrayal. The green ledger was now half full. It was no longer just a record. It was a blueprint, and I was the only one who could read it. The blueprint required patience. I continued my routines, the forgetful mother, the bewildered grandmother. The ledger entries grew, each one a cold, hard fact that fortified my resolve. I watched the money market account. The property tax was paid from it, as Chloe had suggested. They did not replace the funds. The balance dropped by several $1,000s. I recorded the date and the new balance. It was another line in the column of their debt. A week after that transaction, the atmosphere in the house shifted. It was subtle. Chloe was more attentive, bringing me tea without being asked. Marcus was quieter, his smiles strained. They were preparing for something. I observed it the way I once observed quarterly fiscal patterns, a change in the air preceding a significant event. It arrived on a Tuesday evening. Chloe cooked an elaborate meal, not our usual simple fare. Roast chicken, potatoes, fresh green beans. The dining table was set properly, not with everyday plates. "This is a treat," I said, allowing pleasure to color my voice. "We wanted to do something nice," Marcus said, not meeting my eyes. He carved the chicken with intense concentration. Throughout the meal, they made pleasant, shallow conversation. They asked about my day, listened with feigned interest to my rambling account of watching birds at the feeder. The performance was for my benefit, but it was they who were acting. I played my part, grateful and slightly overwhelmed by the attention. When the plates were cleared, Chloe did not bring dessert. Instead, Marcus brought a folder to the table. He set it down between us. Chloe sat beside him, her hands folded, a sympathetic expression on her face. "Mom," Marcus began, his voice overly gentle, "we need to talk about the future a little bit." I tilted my head, the picture of mild curiosity. "The future? Your future, our future," Chloe interjected, leaning forward. "We've been looking at ways to secure things, for all of us." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were official-looking documents. I could see a bank's logo. The words, "Home Equity Line of Credit," were in bold at the top of the first page. "You know, the house is paid off," Marcus said. "It's a great asset, but assets should work for you, not just sit there." "We have a fantastic opportunity," Chloe said, her words coming faster now, fueled by excitement. "An investment. A friend of mine is a partner in a new medical billing service. It's a guaranteed return, but we need capital to buy in. The investment minimum is quite high." I looked from one to the other, letting my gaze soften, unfocused. An investment? That sounds complicated. "It's not really," Marcus assured me, "but we need to use the house as collateral. Just a formality. We'd take out a small line of credit against the equity. We make the investment, the returns come in, we pay off the credit line, and there's a significant profit left over. It would help with your care, with everything." The phrase, "your care," hung in the air. It was the lever they always used. "You want to borrow money against my house?" I asked, phrasing it slowly as if working through a difficult problem. "Not borrow," Chloe corrected quickly. "Utilize. It's your house, of course, but you're part of this family. This would be for the family's stability. It's a grandmother's loan, really, a way to help your son and grandchildren build something." There were no grandchildren. It was a slip, a reveal of the fantasy narrative they had constructed. I let a frown crease my forehead. "I don't know, Marcus. Legal papers. George always handled such things." "I'll handle it, Mom. I just need your signature, as the homeowner." He pushed the document toward me. The signature lines were flagged with yellow stickers. I saw my name, typed. I saw his name and Chloe's, listed elsewhere on the form. I reached for the papers, then drew my hand back. My eyes. The print is so small, and my reading glasses, they're no good for this fine print. "You don't need to read it all," Chloe said, a hint of impatience bleeding through her soothing tone. "It's standard. Marcus has reviewed it." "I'm sure he has," I said, nodding vaguely. "But I have my old glasses, the ones with the stronger prescription. They're upstairs. Let me get them. I should at least try to see what I'm signing. That's what George would have wanted." I invoked my husband's name deliberately, a shield of propriety. They exchanged a glance. It was brief, but I saw the calculation. Denying me my glasses would seem suspicious, even to their compromised morals. Forcing the signature now might raise an alarm in my supposedly addled brain. "Of course, Mom," Marcus said, forcing a smile. "Take your time." I rose slowly, using the table for support. I made my way to my bedroom. My heart was a steady, dull drumbeat. This was the escalation I had anticipated. Theft from accounts was one thing. Attempting to secure a loan against my property was fraud on a different scale. My old glasses were in my top drawer. I also picked up my phone. I returned to the dining room, the large, outdated glasses perched on my nose. I sat down and pulled the document closer. I made a show of it. I tilted the pages to the light. I hummed softly, turning pages with exaggerated care. My, so many words. Just the signature pages are important, Chloe prompted, her finger tapping on a yellow tab. In a moment, dear, I said, my voice absent-minded. I held up the first page, as if struggling to read it. With my other hand under the cover of the table and the paper, I unlocked my phone. I opened the camera app. I pretended to adjust my glasses, bringing the phone lens close to the edge of the document. I pressed the volume button to take a picture silently. I turned the page. I did it again. I moved slowly, methodically, capturing every page of the agreement, every line where my signature was required. The flash was off, the sound was off. To them, I was an old woman squinting at impenetrable legalities. After photographing the final page, I let out a sigh. It's all a blur, I'm afraid. You say it's for an investment? A very safe one, Marcus said, his pen already in hand. He offered it to me. I looked at the pen. I looked at his face, my son's face, now a mask of anxious greed. I took the pen. My hand, I made sure, trembled slightly. I signed the first line, Eleanor Prescott. The signature was close to mine, but not perfect. The wobble was intentional. It had to look like the shaky hand of a confused elder. I signed the next two indicated spots. Each signature was a performance, a piece of evidence in itself. When I was done, I let the pen clatter onto the table. There, all done. I hope it's a good investment. Chloe's smile was brilliant, victorious. She gathered the papers swiftly, as if I might change my mind. It will be, Nora. Thank you. This means so much to us. She kissed my cheek. The gesture felt like a brand. Marcus looked relieved. We'll take care of everything from here, Mom. You won't have to think about it again. That, I knew, was the truest thing he had said all evening. I went to my room soon after, pleading tiredness. I locked the door. I transferred the photographs from my phone to the secure cloud folder. I opened the green ledger. The entry was longer than the others. I noted the date and time. I described the conversation, quoting their phrases, grandmother's loan, your care, family stability. I noted the amount of the proposed line of credit, which I had seen on one of the captured pages, $75,000. I wrote, signed 3 signature pages under pretense of confusion, signatures deliberately inconsistent, photographed all document pages, 12. I closed the ledger. The quiet in my room was absolute. The house that George and I had paid for, the walls that held our history, they had just tried to turn it into a stack of chips for their gamble. The hurt was a distant thing, a cold star in a dark sky. It was no longer about the money in my accounts. It was about the roof over my head. They were not just stealing from me. They were attempting to steal the ground beneath my feet. The blueprint was complete. The evidence of theft was substantial. The evidence of attempted fraud was now secured. It was no longer enough to simply stop them. I needed to ensure they could never do this to me or to anyone else again. I needed an ally. I needed Sylvia Clark. The need for Sylvia Clark was not an emotional impulse. It was a strategic calculation. I had evidence. I had a ledger. I had a signed loan agreement obtained under false pretenses. What I lacked was a clear legal pathway. I knew enough to document a crime, but not enough to ensure its consequences would be both certain and appropriate. Sylvia was a retired attorney. More importantly, she was a friend who had never tolerated fools or injustice. Contacting her required care. They monitored my phone calls, not overtly, but they were often in earshot. I waited until a Thursday morning when Chloe had a long dental appointment and Marcus was at work. I made the call from my bedroom. The door closed. Sylvia, it's Nora Prescott. Her voice, warm and gravelly, came through the line. Nora, what a lovely surprise. How are you, dear? I'm well, thank you. I was wondering if I might visit this afternoon. I have some Garden questions. I remember your roses. It was a weak code, but it was the best I could manage. There was the briefest pause on the line. Sylvia was sharp. Of course. Come for tea. 2 o'clock? That would be perfect. The journey was a simple bus ride. I had insisted on maintaining my independence for local errands, a point Marcus and Chloe had conceded as it relieved them of chauffeur duty. The normality of the routine, the walk to the stop, the exact change, the familiar streets, was a comfort. It was an action they hadn't co-opted. Sylvia lived in a well-kept apartment building downtown, filled with light and plants. Her door was open before I could knock. She stood there, a tall woman with a crown of white braids, her eyes behind stylish glasses missing nothing. She hugged me, a firm, solid embrace. Come in, the kettle's on." Her living room was as I remembered, bookshelves lining every wall, a comfortable clutter of papers and art, the scent of lemon polish and old paper. It was the home of an active mind. She brought in a tea tray and set it on the low table between us. We exchanged pleasantries. She asked after Marcus. I gave a vague, positive answer. She spoke of her book club. I listened. The ritual was observed. Then, as she poured the tea, she looked directly at me. "Your roses are fine, Nora. You've always had a better green thumb than I have. What's really growing in your garden that needs a retired lawyer's opinion?" The directness was a relief. I set my cup down carefully. "A friend of mine," I began, the lie smooth from practice. "She finds herself in a difficult family situation. She's older. She lives with her son and his wife." Sylvia nodded, sipping her tea, her expression neutral. "They've been helping with her finances, but she's begun to notice discrepancies. Small things at first, then larger. They've told her she's confused, that she forgets. They've taken over her statements." "Have they gained power of attorney?" Sylvia's voice was calm, professional. "Not formally, no, but they act as if they have. Recently, they presented her with a loan document, a home equity line of credit for an investment. They had her sign it." Sylvia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Did she sign?" "She did. She felt pressured. They implied it was for her own care, for the family's stability." "And is she confused?" I met her gaze. "She was a bookkeeper for 37 years. She notices discrepancies." A slow smile touched Sylvia's lips. It was not a happy smile. It was a recognition. "I see. And this friend, has she documented these discrepancies?" "She has. A ledger. Dates, amounts, transaction details. She also has copies of the loan papers." "Photographs?" "Yes." Sylvia leaned back in her armchair, steepling her fingers. "The first thing your friend must do is secure her financial accounts. Immediately. She must contact her bank in person, present identification, and revoke any third-party access. She must request new account numbers if necessary. This is not a matter of suspicion, it is a matter of crime prevention." I absorbed this. She was concerned that doing so would alert them. It likely will, but it is a necessary defensive move. The priority is to stop the bleeding. Then she must gather every piece of documentation, the ledger, the photographs, any relevant bank statements, a list of missing assets. She should write a clear chronological statement of events, noting dates and conversations to the best of her recollection. "And then?" I asked, my voice quiet. "And then," Sylvia said, placing her cup on the saucer with a definitive click, "she must decide what she wants. Does she want the money back? Does she want to scare them into stopping? Or does she want justice?" The word hung in the sunlit room. Justice. It was a colder, harder word than revenge. "Justice would involve the police," I stated. "It would. Financial exploitation of an elder is a crime. Fraudulent signature procurement is a crime. The evidence you've described, if it's as clear as you imply, would be of great interest to the Financial Crimes Unit. The loan document alone, if signed under duress or deception, is potentially void, but its existence is proof of intent." She looked at me. her gaze unwavering. "Nora, I am not your lawyer. But if I were representing your friend, I would advise her that she has a strong case, a very strong one. The system can be slow, but it does not look kindly on this particular betrayal." I felt a shift inside, a final piece locking into place. The validation was a tangible thing. There would be consequences for the family. There would be consequences for the perpetrators, Sylvia corrected gently. The victim is not responsible for the consequences that befall those who chose to victimize her. Your friend must understand that. Her kindness has been weaponized. She has a right to reclaim her safety and her property by whatever legal means are available. We sat in silence for a moment. The clock on her mantel ticked softly. "Would you be willing to look at her documentation when it's ready?" I asked. "I would. As a friend, I can help her ensure it's presented properly. I can recommend the right people to speak to at the bank and at the police department." Discreetly. I finished my tea. "Thank you, Sylvia, for the advice and for the tea." "Any time, Nora." She walked me to the door. As I stepped into the hallway, she placed a hand on my arm. "Tell your friend. She's not alone, and she's not confused. She's meticulous. That's her strength." The bus ride home was different. The same streets, the same houses, but my perspective had altered. I had been navigating in the dark with a single candle. Sylvia had switched on a floodlight, illuminating the entire landscape. The path was clear. It was paved with procedure. I arrived home before Chloe. I went to my room. I opened the green ledger to a fresh page. I did not write an entry about Sylvia. Some things were too important for the record. Instead, I wrote a new heading, Actionable Steps. Beneath it, I listed 1. Schedule bank appointment. Primary goal, revoke all third-party access, secure accounts. 2. Compile physical evidence folder, ledger printout, photo evidence, loan docs. 3. Draft chronological statement. The list was simple. It was a to-do list. The emotional weight was gone, replaced by the clean focus of tasks. My visit to Sylvia had not provided emotional comfort. It had provided a battle plan. The ally I needed was not a shoulder to cry on, but a strategist who confirmed the lay of the land and the weapons at my disposal. I heard Chloe's key in the front door. Her cheerful call echoed down the hall. "Nora, I'm home." I closed the ledger. I assumed the familiar, soft expression. "In here, dear," I called back, my voice lightly filtered through the persona they had built for me. The performance would continue, but now it had an expiration date. Every smile, every instance of pretended confusion was a countdown. The first item on my list was the bank. Execution required precision. I waited for a weekday when Marcus was at a conference and Chloe had her weekly volunteer shift at the library, a commitment she valued for its appearance more than its substance. I had a 4-hour window. I dressed carefully. I chose a navy suit I hadn't worn since George's funeral, a crisp white blouse, low-heeled pumps. I arranged my silver hair neatly. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a confused woman. I saw Eleanor Prescott, retired bookkeeper. The costume was for my own benefit as much as for the bank's. It was a uniform for the task ahead. My documents were in a structured leather folder, another relic from my working life. It contained a printed summary from my ledger, the clearest photographs of the forged check and the loan documents, and 2 forms of photo ID. I did not bring the green ledger itself. That was my master copy to remain secure. I took the bus. The familiar journey felt different. I was not a passenger today. I was a commuter with a clear objective. I entered the bank branch shortly after it opened. The air was cool, smelling of disinfectant and paper. I approached a teller, a young man with a polite smile. "I need to speak with the branch manager, please, regarding suspected fraudulent activity on my accounts." His smile faltered for a second. "Of course. May I have your name, and is the manager expecting you?" "Eleanor Prescott. And no, he is not. This is an urgent matter. He nodded, picked up a phone, and spoke in a low voice. A moment later, a middle-aged man in a tailored suit emerged from an office door. He had a calm, competent demeanor. "Mrs. Prescott, I'm David Chen, the branch manager. Please come into my office." The office was quiet, insulated from the lobby noise. He offered me a seat and took his own behind a wide, tidy desk. "How can I help you today?" he asked, his hands folded on the blotter. I opened my leather folder. I placed my driver's license and passport on the desk. I then placed the printed summary sheet on top of them. Over the past several months, unauthorized transactions have been made from my checking, savings, and money market accounts. I began, my voice even and clear. The transactions include online transfers to an account in the name of Marcus Prescott, my son, and at least one forged check. Additionally, a home equity line of credit application was recently submitted with my signature, which I believe was obtained under deceptive circumstances. I am here to revoke all third-party access to my accounts immediately, to secure them, and to report this activity for investigation. Mr. Chen's professional composure tightened into focused concern. He picked up my IDs, verified them against my face, and then studied the summary sheet. His eyes moved quickly down the list of dates and amounts. "I see," he said quietly. He looked at the photograph of the forged check. "And this check? You did not write it?" "I did not. The signature is an imitation. The payee is a fictitious service, and it was deposited into an account ending in 4418, which is not mine." He turned to his computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He pulled up my account profiles. I watched his face as he scanned the screen, his lips pressed into a thin line. "I can see the transfers you've indicated here," he said. "The linked external account is indeed under the name Marcus Prescott. The check in question was deposited into that same account." He looked back at me. "This account was linked for convenience approximately 14 months ago. It was linked during an illness for legitimate assistance. The authority has since been abused." He nodded, his expression grave. "Mrs. Prescott, I am very sorry this has happened. What you're describing is financial exploitation. We have protocols for this." He turned his screen slightly so I could see it. "First, I am immediately removing Marcus Prescott as an authorized user on all your accounts. I am disabling all external transfer capabilities. I would strongly recommend closing these accounts entirely and opening new ones with new numbers. This will prevent any further attempts, even if he has saved your account details elsewhere." "Please proceed with that recommendation," I said. "It will take some time to complete the closures and issue new checks and cards. You will have temporary access details today. The new documents will be mailed to you, to a secure address if you prefer. A post office box would be best. I can rent one today." "Very good." He continued typing, initiating the procedures. "Regarding the loan application, do you have the application number or the paperwork?" I placed the photographed loan documents on his desk. He examined them, his frown deepening. "This is a significant amount. And you signed these?" "I placed signatures on them after being told they were for a secure family investment, a grandmother's loan. I was not given the opportunity to read them thoroughly. I was told I was too confused to understand." Mr. Chen looked up at me, his gaze direct. "You do not seem confused to me, Mrs. Prescott." "Thank you. The performance is for home, not for here." A faint, understanding smile touched his lips. "Understood. I will flag this application in our system as potentially fraudulent and contested. The underwriting department will be notified. It will not proceed. I would also advise you to place a fraud alert on your credit file with the major bureaus. We can provide the information for that." For the next 40 minutes, we worked through the details. He printed temporary account numbers for me. He provided a letter confirming the closure of the old accounts and the removal of authorized users on bank letterhead. He gave me a direct phone number to his desk. He treated me with a respect that was both professional and, I sensed, personally offended on my behalf. When the administrative work was complete, he sat back. The next step, and I must stress this, is to report this to the police. This is not just a banking matter. The amounts and the patterns you've documented constitute criminal activity. Our fraud department will conduct an internal investigation, but a police report is essential for any legal recourse. I understand, I said. I am preparing to do that. Do you feel safe returning to your home? He asked, his voice lowering slightly. For the moment, yes. They believe their narrative. That belief is my current protection. He nodded, though he looked uneasy. Please, be careful, and use the number I gave you if anything changes, or if you need further assistance from us immediately. I stood, gathering my folder. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your efficiency and your discretion. It's my job, Mrs. Prescott, but today it's also my pleasure. I left the bank. The sun was high. I walked to the post office 2 blocks away and rented a small box, giving the address to the bank's online portal via my phone before I even left the building. I then caught the bus home. I arrived before Chloe. I changed out of my suit into a soft cardigan and slacks. I put the leather folder at the back of my closet behind a row of shoe boxes. The temporary bank papers I placed inside a hollowed-out book on my shelf. When Chloe returned, full of trivial chatter about the library, I was in the kitchen, making tea with slightly trembling hands, a touch I allowed to be visible. Did you have a nice day, Nora? You look a bit tired. Just a quiet day, dear, I said, offering her a vague smile. I think I'll rest my eyes a bit before dinner. You do that, she said, already turning away, her mind on other things. In my room, I did not rest. I opened the green ledger. I made a new entry, noting the date and time of the bank visit. I recorded the manager's name. I wrote, all third-party access revoked. Accounts closed. New ones established. Loan application flagged as fraudulent. Bank manager advised police report. P.O. box secured. I closed the ledger. The financial siege was over. The fortress walls were repaired and reinforced. The initiative had shifted. They just didn't know it yet. Their source of funds was now a dead end. It was only a matter of time before they tested the tap and found it dry. My performance would need to reach its highest level yet in the days to come, as their confusion turned to panic, and their panic to suspicion. I was ready. The quiet after the bank visit lasted 3 days. It was a tense, watchful quiet. I observed them more closely than ever, performing my role of benign confusion with meticulous care. I knew the discovery would come. It was a matter of which account they tried to tap first. It was Marcus who made the attempt. On the evening of the 3rd day, I heard him in his small office, the clicking of a mouse rapid and frustrated. Then silence. He emerged, his face pale. He went to the kitchen where Chloe was preparing dinner. Something's wrong with the online banking, he said, his voice low but strained. What do you mean? Chloe asked, her tone sharp. The link to Mom's account. It's gone. Disconnected. I tried to sign into her accounts directly and my credentials don't work. It says access denied. Did you forget the password? No, I saved it. It's not that. It's like the access was revoked. I was in the living room, a book open on my lap, unread. I listened, my expression one of mild absorption in the garden outside. Call the bank, Chloe hissed. Do it now. The credit card payment is due tomorrow. We need that transfer. Marcus retreated to the office. I heard the muffled sound of his voice on the phone. The conversation was brief. He returned to the kitchen. They said there was suspicious activity on the account. They've secured it. The representative wouldn't give me any details. Said only the primary account holder could discuss it. They told me to have Mom call or visit. Suspicious activity. Chloe's voice was a whisper of outrage. What does that mean? Did someone hack it? I don't know. Maybe it was all those transfers. They might have triggered a fraud algorithm. Well, she's not calling. We'll take her in tomorrow. We'll get it sorted. She'll be confused. We'll explain it to the manager. It's just a glitch." They did not take me the next day. Chloe had a conflict. They decided to wait. Their anxiety was a visible hum in the house. They spoke in clipped tones, argued over minor things. I continued to be the placid, unaware center of the storm. 2 days after the online banking failure, I decided to check on my security. Not the financial security, the personal, my heirlooms. George's gold pocket watch, engraved with his father's initials. My mother's double-strand pearl necklace, each pearl a luminous memory. They resided in a velvet-lined box in the top drawer of my dresser. I had not opened it in several weeks. That afternoon, while they were both out running errands, together, a rare occurrence likely driven by shared stress, I went to my dresser. I pulled open the top drawer. The jewelry box was there. I lifted it out. It felt too light. I opened the lid. The watch's indentation in the velvet was empty. The pearls were gone. The space where they had lain was a void of crushed blue velvet. I stood perfectly still. The theft of money was a violation of trust. This was a violation of history. The watch was not just gold. It was the weight of George's hand in mine, the tick of time we had shared. The pearls were not just jewelry. They were my mother's voice, the scent of her perfume. They had taken things that had no price, only meaning. A coldness settled in my bones, deeper than any I had felt before. This was not greed born of financial pressure. This was contempt. They saw my past, my loves, as convertible assets. They had likely taken them weeks ago, perhaps pawning them for cash to cover their own shortcomings, assuming I was too addled to remember what I owned. I closed the empty box. I returned it to the drawer exactly as I had found it. I did not rage. I did not cry. I walked to my desk. I opened the green ledger. I turned to a new page. I wrote the date. Under a new heading, Missing Personal Property, I listed 1. Gold pocket watch, engraved J.W. P. Belonged to husband George Prescott. 2. Pearl necklace, double strand, 18-inch, belonged to mother Lillian Jones. I then added a third entry, one I had suspected but not confirmed until this moment of utter clarity. 3. Rose gold wedding band, wide floral engraving, not worn daily for safety, missing from secondary box. I closed the ledger. I picked up my phone. I dialed Sylvia Clark's number. She answered on the second ring. "Sylvia, it's Nora." "Nora, is everything all right?" Her voice was alert. "They've taken my mother's pearls, and George's watch. My wedding band is also gone." There was a beat of silence on the line. "I see," she said, her tone turning hard and crisp. "That changes the calculus. That's larceny. It moves this from exploitation to outright theft of tangible property. Do you have photos of these items?" "I have old photographs from family occasions." "Gather them. This is the last straw you needed, Nora. You have the financial fraud. You have the attempted loan fraud. Now you have the theft of personal effects. The case is complete. It's time to stop preparing and start acting." "I have the evidence folder ready," I said. My voice sounded distant even to me. "Good. Bring it to me tomorrow. My apartment, 10 a.m. We will review it. Then we will go together to the police station. I will accompany you. You will not be alone." "Thank you, Sylvia." "No thanks needed. This is what friends do, and what former officers of the court wish they could do more often. Get some rest. Tomorrow we begin." I ended the call. I looked around my room. The house was still empty. The silence was no longer tense. It was hollow. The place where my treasures had been was a physical ache, but it had fused my resolve into something unbreakable. Any lingering hesitation, any faint hope that Marcus might somehow come to his senses, evaporated. The son, I knew, was gone, replaced by a man who would pawn his father's watch. The performance was nearly over. The final act required no acting, only truth. I would present the facts, the ledger, the photographs, the bank's letter, the list of stolen memories. The law would do the rest. I did not search the house for the items. I knew I would not find them. Their absence was its own form of evidence, a testament to the kind of people I was living with. I sat at my desk, waiting for the sound of their return, the final evening of the great lie we were all living. I was calm. The storm of feeling had passed, leaving a landscape of clear, cold certainty. I heard their car in the driveway just after 6. The engine cut, doors slammed, and their voices approached the house, tense and clipped. By the time the key turned in the lock, I was in my armchair, the same book open on my lap. The performance had one final night to run. "Nora, we're back." Chloe's call was brusque. "In here," I replied, my voice soft. They entered the living room, their faces etched with the strain of their errands and their failed financial maneuver. Marcus avoided looking at me directly. Chloe forced a bright smile. "We'll get dinner started soon. Just need to sort a few things." I nodded amiably. "No rush, dear." They disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the low murmur of an urgent conversation, the words indistinguishable, but the tone clear. Frustration and a growing undercurrent of fear. They were stranded. I was an island they could no longer reach, and they were just beginning to realize it. I went to bed early that night, pleading a headache. It was not entirely a lie. The pressure behind my eyes was the weight of the upcoming day. I slept little, running through mental checklists. Morning arrived. I rose at my usual time. I dressed in comfortable, ordinary clothes, nothing that would signal an important appointment. At breakfast, I announced my plans with rehearsed vagueness. "I think I'll take a walk to the park this morning. The fresh air might do me good." Chloe, preoccupied with her phone, nodded absently. "Don't overdo it. Maybe we can go to the bank this afternoon, Nora, to sort out that little problem with your accounts." She said it lightly, testing. "Oh, that sounds tedious," I said, wrinkling my nose. "But if you think it's best, we'll see how I feel after my walk." I left the ambiguity hanging, a hook of compliant uncertainty. I left the house with only my large handbag. Inside was the leather folder, now empty. My mission was to fill it. My first stop was a printing shop a 15-minute walk away. I used a self-service computer terminal. From my secure cloud storage, I printed every piece of evidence, the transaction summary from my ledger, the photographs of the forged check, front and back, the photographs of every page of the home equity loan application. I printed the bank's confirmation letter from Mr. Chen, which I had retrieved from the hollowed-out book. I also printed the old family photographs I had scanned years ago. One of George wearing the pocket watch chain across his vest, another of my mother smiling, the pearls gleaming at her throat. I printed a simple, clean copy of the list of missing items from my ledger. The printer hummed, depositing page after page of betrayal into the output tray. I collected them, my hands steady. I paid in cash. At a nearby office supply store, I purchased a sturdy, plain black accordion folder and a pack of divider tabs. I then went to a small, quiet cafe and secured a corner table. I ordered tea and began the work of assembly. This was the final audit. I labeled the divider tabs: financial records, fraudulent documents, bank correspondence, personal property theft, chronological statement. I sorted each printed page into its appropriate section. The financial records section grew the thickest. The ledger summary, followed by individual bank statements I had printed at home weeks ago, with the unauthorized transfers highlighted in yellow. The fraudulent documents section held the check photos and the loan papers. The bank correspondence section held Mr. Chen's letter. The personal property section held the photos of the heirlooms and my typed list. Finally, I took out a legal pad. I began to write my statement. I started with the date I overheard the conversation in the kitchen. I wrote in clear, declarative sentences. I noted facts, not feelings. On April 12th, I overheard my daughter-in-law, Chloe Prescott, state to my son, Marcus Prescott, "She's too confused to notice the missing money." I listed each subsequent discovery in order: the online transfers, the forged check, The solicitation of the loan, the revocation of my paper statements, the attempted access after I secured the accounts, the discovery of the missing heirlooms. I referenced the supporting evidence by section. I signed and dated it at the bottom. I read it over 3 times. It was concise, it was factual, it was damning. I placed the statement at the front of the accordion folder. I closed the clasp. It was a dense, heavy package. The physical weight of it was satisfying. It was the tangible form of my silent months of work. I arrived at Sylvia's apartment at exactly 10. She answered, her gaze immediately dropping to the folder in my hands. She nodded as if I had brought her an important manuscript for review. "Come in, let's see what we have." We sat at her dining table. I opened the folder and laid out the sections before her. I did not explain. I let her read. She started with my chronological statement, her eyes moving quickly down the page. She then moved to the financial records, cross-referencing dates with the bank statements. She examined the photos of the check and the loan documents, her lips pressed tight. She looked at the pictures of George and my mother, then at the list of missing items. The review took 20 minutes. She was silent throughout. When she finished, she gathered the papers back into their sections and closed the folder. She looked at me. "This is exceptional, Nora. It's precise. It's chronological. It's supported. There is no ambiguity here. A prosecutor would love this case." "What happens next?" I asked. "We go to the police. Today. Not your local precinct, but the central station downtown. They have a financial crimes unit. I've already made a call to an old colleague who works there. He's expecting us this afternoon." "Today?" The word escaped before I could temper it. The finality was sudden, even though I had prepared for it. "The evidence is ready, your accounts are secure. The longer we wait, the more opportunity they have to create a narrative, or to dispose of the stolen property. We strike now while the trail is fresh and you are prepared." Her voice was gentle but firm. "You have done the hard part, the meticulous part. Now we let the system do its work. It will be difficult. There will be questions. There will be confrontation. But you will not be alone. I will be with you every step of the way, as your friend and as your guide." I looked at the black folder. It represented an end and a beginning. "All right," I said, "today." "Good. Leave the folder with me for now. I'll make a photocopy of everything for my records, just as a backup. You should go home, have lunch, act normally. I will pick you up at 2 o'clock. Tell them you're going out with me for an afternoon visit. It's not a lie." I returned home. Chloe was out. Marcus was in his office. The door closed. I made myself a simple lunch. I ate it at the kitchen table, tasting nothing. The house felt like a stage set after the play has ended, waiting for the strike crew to clear it away. At 1:30, I told Marcus I was going to visit Sylvia for tea and maybe a film. "Have fun, Mom," he said, barely looking up from his computer screen. His mind was elsewhere, likely on the crumbling edges of his own life. He did not see the finality in my eyes. When Sylvia's car pulled up outside, I picked up my handbag. I did not look back at the house. I got into the passenger seat. She placed the black accordion folder on the back seat. "All set?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She pulled away from the curb. We drove in silence toward the center of town, toward the plain concrete building that housed the police headquarters. The quiet in the car was not tense. It was the quiet of a task understood, of a path chosen. The period of observation and documentation was over. The period of consequences was about to begin. The central police station was a study in controlled chaos. Sylvia led me through a maze of desks to a glass-walled office where a detective named Alvarez was waiting. He was a man in his 50s with a tired face and sharp eyes. Sylvia's introduction was brief and professional. "Detective Alvarez, this is Eleanor Prescott. She has a comprehensive report of ongoing financial exploitation and theft." Detective Alvarez gestured to chairs. "Please sit." He listened without interruption as I presented the black folder. I gave him the short version, the chronology I had written. I pointed to the key evidence, The bank letter confirming revoked access, the forged check, the loan papers, the list of stolen heirlooms. He opened the folder and spent several minutes flipping through the sections. He paused at the photograph of the check. He examined the loan application signatures. He looked at the family photos of the watch and pearls. "This is very organized, Mrs. Prescott," he said finally, his voice neutral. "I was a bookkeeper," I replied. He nodded. "The bank has already flagged the activity. That's good. It shows prior reporting. The amounts here are significant. The attempted loan is major. The personal effects." He tapped the list. "These are specific, identifiable items. That helps." He asked clarifying questions, dates, the nature of my relationship with Marcus and Chloe, whether I had confronted them. I answered factually. Sylvia interjected only to ensure legal terminology was correct. After 40 minutes, he closed the folder. "We will open an investigation. This constitutes probable cause for several crimes: elder financial abuse, fraud, forgery, grand larceny. I will need to contact the bank's fraud department. I will also need to speak with your son and daughter-in-law." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now, you go home. Act normally. Do not alert them. The investigation will proceed on our end. They will be contacted formally in due course. It may be a few days. We have to coordinate with the bank." He handed me his card. "Call me if anything changes or if you feel unsafe." "Do you feel unsafe?" "Not physically," I said, "but I would like this resolved." "Understood." He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "We'll be in touch, Mrs. Prescott. You've done the right thing." Sylvia drove me home. "The machine is in motion now, Nora. It's out of our hands. The next part is waiting." I returned to the house. It was just past 4. Chloe was in the living room looking at her phone. She glanced up. "How was your visit?" "Lovely," I said, hanging up my coat. "Sylvia sends her regards." "That's nice." Her attention returned to her screen. I could see the tension in her shoulders. The normalcy was a thin veneer. The unraveling began 2 days later. It started with the mail. I was in the kitchen when Marcus brought it in. He sorted through it, then stopped. He held a business envelope, his name and address typed. The return address was his bank's corporate security office. His face lost all color. He tore it open. His eyes scanned the single page inside. He made a sound, a soft exhale of pure dread. "What is it?" Chloe asked, coming up behind him. He didn't answer. He just handed her the letter. She read it. Her hand flew to her mouth. "No, this can't be." "What's wrong, dear?" I asked from the table, my voice gently concerned. "Nothing, Mom," Marcus snapped, then immediately corrected himself. "Just a banking error. I need to make a call." He snatched the letter back and retreated to his office, Chloe on his heels. I remained at the table, slowly peeling an apple. The door to his office closed firmly. Their voices were muffled but heated. I caught fragments. "Formal investigation. Fraudulent activity. Request for records." "You said it was safe. You said the link was clean." "It was. The bank must have, I don't know." "My name is on everything, too. They're asking for my records." "Keep your voice down." The argument spiraled. Accusations flew. Chloe blamed Marcus for his carelessness. Marcus blamed Chloe for her greed. They were a team disintegrating under the first touch of external pressure. They did not, for a single moment, suspect the source. I was invisible. I was irrelevant. I was the confused old woman in the kitchen, a piece of the scenery. That evening, the silence was brittle. Over dinner, Chloe tried to project calm. "Everything's fine, Nora. Just a silly mix-up with the bank." "It'll get sorted." "Banks," I said, shaking my head with a faint smile. "They're all computers now. No one to talk to." "Exactly," Marcus said, the word too forceful. The next day, a certified letter arrived for Chloe from the same bank security office. Her composure cracked further. They spent hours behind closed doors, their whispers frantic. They researched online. They talked about lawyers, their voices thick with fear. "It's just the bank," Chloe said at one point, trying to convince herself. It's a financial review. It's not the police. Yet, Marcus replied, a hollow word. I observed it all from my armchair, my knitting needles clicking a steady, innocuous rhythm. They would glance at me, but their looks were not of suspicion. They were of irritation, as if my peaceful presence was a mockery of their panic. Their world was closing in, and they were looking for enemies in every shadow except the one cast by the quiet woman in the corner. The net was closing. They could feel its weight, but they could not see its threads. Every whispered argument, every fearful glance at the mail, every false reassurance they uttered in my presence was a note in the final movement of their own making. They had constructed a prison of their own greed, and I had simply handed the key to the law. The tension in the house was now a living thing, a coiling serpent of dread. And I, the supposed mouse in the room, was the only one who was not afraid. The Tuesday morning dawned clear and ordinary. I was in the kitchen toasting a slice of bread when the doorbell rang. It was 8:07 a.m. The chime was sharp in the quiet house. Chloe, still in her robe, padded from the bedroom towards the front door, calling out, "I'll get it!" I moved to the doorway of the kitchen, giving me a view of the hall. Chloe opened the door. The morning sunlight framed two figures on the porch. Both wore dark jackets. One was a man, the other a woman. They held up leather wallets, flipping them open to reveal badges. "Good morning. We're looking for Chloe Prescott and Marcus Prescott," the female officer said. Her voice was polite but carried no warmth. Chloe's smile, initially bright and hostess-like, froze. "I'm Chloe Prescott. Is everything all right? Has there been an accident?" "No accident, ma'am. We need to speak with you and your husband regarding an investigation. Is Mr. Prescott home?" "An investigation? What kind of investigation?" Chloe's voice rose slightly. She gripped the edge of the door. Marcus appeared from the bedroom, pulling a shirt on. "What's going on? Who is it?" "Police, sir," the male officer said. "We need you both to come down to the station to answer some questions." "The station?" Marcus's face went slack. "Questions about what? You have to tell us what this is about." "It's in regard to allegations of financial fraud and elder exploitation," the female officer stated. The words were administrative, but they hit the air like physical blows. Chloe made a small, choked sound. "Elder? That's absurd. There must be a mistake." She laughed, a high, brittle noise. "Our family is very close. This is ridiculous." "The allegations are specific and supported by evidence," the male officer continued, his tone unwavering. "We're asking for your cooperation in coming to the station voluntarily to discuss the matter. You are not under arrest at this time. This is for questioning." "Evidence? What evidence?" Marcus demanded, stepping forward. He looked past the officers, as if the answer might be on the lawn. "Who made these allegations?" "We're not at liberty to discuss the specifics here, sir. We can do that at the station. It would be best to come with us now." I remained in the kitchen doorway. The female officer's gaze shifted past Chloe and Marcus, meeting mine for a brief moment. There was no recognition in her eyes, only a professional assessment. She saw an older woman in a housecoat, a bystander. "I need to call our lawyer," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "You are free to do so, sir. You can call from the station or you can have your attorney meet us there. But we do need you to come with us now." Chloe turned, her eyes wild. She saw me. For a fraction of a second, her mask of victimized innocence held. Then something else flickered, a dawning, terrible suspicion. It was gone as quickly as it came, buried under a wave of panic. "Nora, it's a misunderstanding. We'll get it sorted." I nodded slowly, saying nothing. "Just let me get dressed," Marcus said, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "We'll wait here," the female officer said. Marcus and Chloe retreated to their bedroom. The officers remained standing just inside the front door, their presence making the familiar hallway seem alien and small. I went back to the kitchen counter and slowly spread butter on my cold toast. The actions were automatic. The sound of drawers opening and closing, of hushed, frantic whispers came from their room. 5 minutes later, they emerged. Chloe was dressed in neat slacks and a sweater, her hair hastily brushed. Marcus wore a button-down shirt, misbuttoned. He fumbled with his cuffs. "We'll follow you in our car," Marcus said, a last attempt at control. "That's fine, sir," the male officer said. "We'll escort you." They filed out. Chloe glanced back at me once more, her expression now pure, unadulterated fear. The door closed behind them. The silence that filled the house was different from any before. It was not the quiet of tension or secrets. It was the quiet after the storm has passed, leaving only wreckage in its wake. I finished my toast. I washed the plate. I wiped the counter. Then I went to my bedroom. I did not pack a suitcase. I packed a small, sturdy overnight bag. I placed inside it the green ledger, a change of clothes, my medications, and my toiletries. I dressed in the navy suit I had worn to the bank. I fixed my hair. At 9:30, Sylvia's car pulled into the driveway. I picked up my bag and walked to the front door. I did not look around. I locked the door behind me and placed the key under the mat, a temporary measure. I got into Sylvia's car. She looked at me, at my bag, at my suit. "It's done," she asked. "They left with the police 40 minutes ago." She nodded, put the car in reverse, and backed out of the driveway. "Detective Alvarez called. They've been taken to separate interview rooms. Your folder is with him. He's going to present the evidence to them individually. He asked if you would be willing to come to the station later, to be available. You don't have to see them." "I'll come," I said. "I want to know what happens." "Then we'll go to my place first. We'll wait for the call." We drove away from the house. I did not look back. The performance was over. The audience had left. All that remained was the final review of the accounts, the closing entry. I was ready to write it. We waited at Sylvia's apartment. The morning stretched into early afternoon. Sylvia made tea, but we barely touched it. The phone rang just after 1. Sylvia answered, listened, and said, "We'll be there in 20 minutes." She hung up. "They're ready. They've presented the evidence. Detective Alvarez would like you to come down. There's a viewing room." We drove back to the station in the same silence that had carried us away from my house. It was a silence of completion. We were met by a uniformed officer who led us through a different corridor, away from the main desks, to a door with a small numbered placard. He opened it. The room was small and dark, dominated by a large one-way mirror. On the other side was a standard interview room, a table, 3 chairs, institutional flooring. Marcus sat on one side of the table, his head in his hands. Chloe sat beside him, but she was angled away, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was staring at the wall, her face blotchy and pale. Detective Alvarez sat across from them. My black accordion folder was open on the table before him. We entered as he was speaking. His voice came through a small speaker in our wall, clear and calm. "The documentation is exhaustive, Mr. Prescott. It includes a ledger kept by your mother detailing every unauthorized transaction, with dates, amounts, and her notes on the conversations that prompted her investigation. It begins with an entry dated April 12th, quoting a statement made by your wife. She's too confused to notice the missing money." Chloe flinched as if struck. Marcus lifted his head. His eyes were red. "That's not... She can't... She's confused. Her mind isn't right. She's imagining things." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Alvarez said, his tone flat. He slid a photograph across the table. It was the picture of the forged check. "This check, made out to Green Lawn Landscaping, was deposited into your joint account, ending in 4418. Your mother has never hired that company. A handwriting expert will confirm the signature is not hers. It's a forgery." Marcus stared at the photo. He said nothing. Alvarez then placed the printed photographs of the home equity loan application on the table. "This application for a $75,000 line of credit, signed by your mother. Her statement indicates she signed under the belief it was a grandmother's loan for a safe family investment after being told she was too confused to understand the documents. The bank has confirmed the application has been flagged as fraudulent and will not be processed. She signed it willingly, Chloe burst out, her voice shrill. She wanted to help us. Her contemporaneous notes and the photographic record she made of the documents before signing indicate a different story. They indicate deliberate deception on your part. Her notes? Marcus whispered, looking utterly lost. What notes? The ledger, Alvarez said, tapping the folder. She kept a detailed record. She also has photographs of missing personal property. He placed the family photos and the list on the table. A gold pocket watch belonging to her late husband, a pearl necklace belonging to her mother, a wedding band. These items were removed from her home. Do you know where they are? Chloe's breathing became rapid, shallow. She shook her head, a frantic mechanical motion. No, I don't know. She must have lost them. She misplaces things. We will be checking local pawn shop records. These are distinctive items. We will find them. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. She did all this? The ledger? The photos? She planned this? She documented a crime in progress, Mr. Prescott. That is not planning. That is citizenship. You and your wife are the ones who planned. The evidence shows a systematic pattern of financial exploitation, escalating to attempted major fraud, coupled with the theft of sentimental property. The district attorney's office will be reviewing the case for charges. I am advising you both to secure legal counsel immediately. The finality in the room was palpable. Chloe began to cry, not delicate tears, but harsh, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. We're sorry. We'll give it all back. It was a mistake. We were under pressure. Your mother's financial accounts have been secured and moved, Alvarez continued, unmoved. Restitution will be a matter for the courts. My investigation is focused on the criminal acts. Do you have anything to add to your statements at this time? Marcus looked at the pile of evidence, at the meticulous printing, the highlighted statements, the cold chronology of his betrayal laid bare. The reality seemed to collapse onto him. His shoulders folded. He put his head back in his hands, a low moan escaping him. It was the sound of a man watching his own life dismantle piece by piece. Chloe kept sobbing, repeating, I'm sorry, to the unresponsive detective. Alvarez gathered the papers back into the folder. This interview is concluded. An officer will be in to process your formal statements. Again, I strongly advise you to contact attorneys. He stood, collected the folder, and left the room. On our side of the mirror, the officer opened our door. Detective Alvarez stepped inside a moment later. He handed the black folder to me. It's done, Mrs. Prescott. They have been confronted with the evidence. Their reactions were instructive. They will be released today, but the case file is now active. The DA will take it from here. There will be court dates, but with this documentation, a plea agreement is likely. Thank you, Detective, I said. My voice was steady. You built the case for us. My job was just to present it. He gave a brief, professional nod and left. Sylvia touched my elbow. Ready to go? I looked one last time through the glass. Marcus remained slumped, a broken figure. Chloe was still crying, but now it was with the desperate energy of a trapped animal. I felt no triumph. I felt a clean, empty space where the weight of their deception had been. It was over. We drove back to Sylvia's. I stayed with her that night. The following day, with Sylvia and a locksmith present, I returned to the house. It was empty. Their personal effects were still there, but the life had been drained from the place. I packed a suitcase with more of my things. I took the green ledger from my bag and placed it on the desk in my bedroom. Its work was done. I arranged for a real estate agent to begin the process of selling the house. I would use the proceeds to buy a small, secure apartment in a building Sylvia recommended. The money from my secured accounts was mine again. The missing heirlooms were gone, but the police were tracing them. It was a material loss. I had survived a greater one. A week later, through Sylvia's contact at the DA's office, I learned Marcus and Chloe had retained a lawyer. They were negotiating a plea deal. The charges would be substantial, but a full trial was unlikely. Restitution would be a condition of any agreement. I did not involve myself in the details. I provided my documentation and let the machine work. I never spoke to Marcus again. His lawyer conveyed a request for a meeting, for forgiveness. I sent back a single sentence through my own attorney. I have nothing to say to him. It was not a statement of anger. It was a statement of fact. The account was closed. Sometimes, in the quiet of my new apartment, I think of that afternoon sun in the living room, the warmth on my legs, and the sound of that whisper that started it all. They saw confusion. I saw a problem to be solved. They saw weakness. I saw the methodical patience of a lifetime of balancing ledgers. They saw an ending. I was simply careful enough to write my own.